All right, let's get into it. Number 10. Homemade alcohol. You're on a cell block at around 2 in the morning. Nothing's moving. The lights are low. Somewhere in the back of a toilet tank, sealed in a plastic bag behind the float valve, something is fermenting. Oranges, a few sugar packets, the heel of a bread loaf, water. You can't smell it yet, but in 2 more days you will. Pruno is what they call it. Sometimes hooch, sometimes buck, sometimes toilet wine. The name comes from prunes, which is what they used to make it with in California, going back over 100 years. The recipe hasn't changed much. Fruit from the chow line, sugar from packets taken at breakfast, bread crust for the yeast, all of it sealed in a shampoo bottle or a doubled-up plastic bag and kept warm. Against a heating pipe, wrapped in a towel under the mattress, next to the hot water outlet in the sink. It takes about 5 to 7 days. What you get out the other end is somewhere between weak beer and rough wine, usually around 3 to 8% alcohol, tasting like sour fruit punch that something went wrong in. One inmate described it as the nastiest sweet and sour drink you've ever had, with bread floating in it. Every correctional facility in the United States bans it. Getting caught means solitary, loss of good time credit, loss of commissary privileges. During a single morning shakedown at a prison in Louisiana, officers recovered 3 full gallons from one facility. Here's what most people don't get. The danger isn't mainly the drinking. It's the botulism. When you ferment something in a sealed bag with no oxygen and no temperature control, there's a bacteria that can grow in there that produces one of the most powerful toxins on Earth. California inmates have gotten seriously sick. Some have died. A liquor store bottle of wine went through a regulated process to make sure that doesn't happen. Pruno didn't. The economics are simple. $5 to $10 in commissary ingredients becomes $20 to $60 in stamps by the time the batch is done, more in facilities where outside alcohol is harder to get in. The brewer charges what the market will bear. The bag has to be burped daily to let out the gas pressure or it ruptures and the smell gives everything away. Experienced brewers pass the bag between cells to spread the scent around so no single cell gets flagged. Right now, on some cell block somewhere in this country, there's a bag in a toilet tank that's been there for 4 days. 1 more to go. A cigarette used to be worth almost nothing. Ban it, and watch what happens. Number 9. Tobacco. You're a new inmate transferring into a federal facility sometime after 2005 when the Bureau of Prisons went fully smoke-free. You've got a habit. You brought nothing. The first person who slides you a hand-rolled cigarette through the bars, you owe them. The price they name is not the price you'd pay at a gas station. Tobacco was the original prison currency. For most of the 20th century, it was standard commissary, a unit of account, the way you priced everything from a haircut to a favor to a drug deal. When the federal system banned it, and most states followed over the years after, it didn't stop. It transformed. A pouch of rolling tobacco that costs about $2 outside breaks down into 80 individual roll-ups inside a federal facility, each one worth a postal stamp at face value, which works out to around $240. A single Marlboro can go for $20. A pack that runs $8 to $10 on the street can cost $200 inside. The penalty structure is what makes this business. Getting caught with cigarettes earns a 300 series disciplinary shot, which is roughly the same level as petty theft. Getting caught with heroin earns a 100 series shot, which is the same level as assault. The math writes itself. High profit, low penalty. That's the most attractive trade in the facility. Prison gangs figured this out fast. Officers figured it out too. The ones who smuggle tobacco don't think of themselves as criminals. They think of themselves as guys getting by. One pouch in a jacket pocket on the way through the checkpoint is $400 in internal market value at retail. $100 in their pocket after the split. The risk of getting fired is real, but the risk of serious federal charges is lower than for drugs. You can see the calculation. The ban was sold as a health measure and a fire safety measure. What it actually did was create the highest markup contraband in the building at the lowest legal risk. Tobacco prices inside every system that banned it have gone up every year since the ban took effect. Not down. Up in Pennsylvania, when a new prison opened smoke-free and inmates transferred in from a facility where tobacco had still been circulating, a $5 pouch made the trip and was worth $60 in commissary goods within the first week. That's the market setting the price in real time. The ban didn't reduce smoking, it made the people running the distribution network rich. A shank doesn't have a market price. It has something more valuable than that. Number 8. Homemade weapons. You're running a shakedown. 4 a.m, 130 officers moving through the blocks before anyone is fully awake. By the end of the morning, you've got 60 of them laid out on a table. Sharpened toothbrushes. A metal strip torn from a bunk frame and ground to a point on the concrete floor. A pen with one end melted into a spike. A comb with every other tooth snapped off and the spine sharpened. 60 of these. One facility. One morning. They're called shanks, sometimes shivs in the news, but nobody inside calls them that. They're made from whatever's in the cell. A toothbrush takes about 20 minutes to sharpen on a cinder block wall. A more sophisticated one, longer, wrapped handle, double-edged, can take days of slow work done between counts when no officer is passing. The metal strips come from bunk frames, ventilation grates, the edges of shelving, staple springs, fork tines. Even soft plastic items have been turned into weapons by enough patience and abrasion. The official line is that shanks are banned weapons posing a direct security threat. That's true. But here's what actually happens when you talk to people who've been inside. Most inmates carrying a shank have never used it and don't plan to. The shank is insurance. It's the reason someone thinks twice before starting something. In an environment where you can't call for help and the threat arrives without warning, carrying one is a rational choice the way it's a rational choice in any place where violence is possible and response time is measured in minutes you might not have. That asymmetry makes the arms race impossible to win. The facility has to make every possible material non-sharpenable. The inmate only has to find one thing that works. Testing found inmates adapt to new materials within weeks. Every material swap created new innovations. Nothing tested fully solved the problem. The market value is almost zero. Shanks aren't traded. They're made from free materials whenever needed. A sophisticated one might change hands for 5 to 10 stamps as a utility item, but that's rare. Their value is functional, not financial, which is what makes them different from everything else on this list. The next item requires outside money, outside coordination, and a willing accomplice, and it makes everything else financially possible. Number 7. Prescription pills and opioids. You're in a prison mailroom. It's a normal-looking greeting card, the kind a family member might send. Birthday cake. On the front. Inside, between the folded paper and the backing, there are 4 small strips. Each one looks like a thin breath freshener. Each one is worth somewhere between $75 and $150. Suboxone is the dominant pharmaceutical contraband in many state systems right now. Outside, it's prescribed to treat opioid addiction. It's designed to reduce cravings and block the high from other opioids. Inside, it is the high. A single strip worth about $5 on the street commands that $75 to $150 price inside facilities in Michigan and elsewhere. Users cut the strip into quarters. Then, cut those quarters again. A sliver dissolved in water and taken as nose drops still produces a real opioid effect. Some users place a piece under the eyelid for faster absorption. Even those fractional doses retail for $25 to $40 each. The entry methods are the reason pills remain common despite screening. They are small. They are flat. They fit inside greeting cards, between pages of books, folded into legal documents, tucked under the glue strip of an envelope. Visitors swallow balloon-wrapped quantities and retrieve them internally. Staff carry them in clothing, in personal items, through checkpoints they wave themselves through. In a northeastern Ohio case, a nurse and a corrections officer were federally charged with running exactly this kind of operation. The nurse paid through phone payment apps, the desk officer waving her through without screening. Trust me on this. The most efficient drug smuggler in a prison is someone who works there. During the period when visits were suspended because of the pandemic, the drug supply at facilities across the country did not drop. First-person accounts say it increased. The only people coming and going were staff. The anomaly that stays with you is this. Suboxone is prescribed in some progressive facilities as legitimate addiction treatment. In most others, it's banned as serious contraband. The difference between a legal Suboxone user and an illegal one in a prison can be a single piece of paperwork. The drug designed to end addiction became one of the most addictive commodities the system produces. Pills are small and discreet. The next item is invisible and designed to look like nothing at all. Number 6. Synthetic drugs. You get a letter. It's on regular, white paper. Nothing printed on it, or maybe a few lines of text that look like a note from a lawyer. You fold it, tear off a 1-inch piece, and smoke it. What you've just paid $400 for is a square of paper the size of a postage stamp soaked in a synthetic chemical compound that produces a high somewhere between cannabis and something far more dangerous. This is K2, called the 2 inside, or strips, or paper. It entered prisons through the mail system around 2015, spread fast, and has been the dominant drug in certain state systems for years. The reason is the detection gap. Standard urine tests check for cannabis metabolites. K2 doesn't produce those. For years, facilities were running tests, getting negative results, and calling the drug problem under control while inmates were using heavily. The tests weren't finding anything because they weren't designed to find this. The production cost for the smuggler is nearly nothing. The chemical compound costs something. The paper costs nothing. A single full sheet of letter paper soaked in the solution, dried, and cut into 1-inch squares can produce enough doses to generate several $1,000s in internal retail at $400 per square. The paper enters as legal correspondence and exploits the protections covering attorney-client mail, which the facility is generally not allowed to open and read without judicial clearance. One intercepted batch was caught because the words solicitor-client privilege were misspelled on the label. That's what stopped it. The drug itself is unpredictable in a way street cannabis isn't. It's an engineered chemical, not a plant compound, and the concentration varies by batch, by the saturation of the paper, by how the piece was torn. Some batches produce a mild calming effect. Some produce violent hallucinations, seizures, cardiac episodes, and loss of consciousness. Officers describe inmates under its influence as extremely difficult to restrain. 3 inmates at a Missouri facility died from apparent overdoses within 2 days. Here's the thing most people don't get about the detection problem. Every time a new synthetic compound is added to the test panels, the chemists who make it adjust the molecular structure. New variant. Same effect. The test can't find it again. This has been happening for a decade, and the gap is never fully closed. Most facilities are still testing for compounds that were replaced years ago. The paper gets in through the mail. The next item gets in from the sky, at night, without any human being crossing a checkpoint. Number 5. Drone delivered contraband. It's after midnight. Recreation yard is empty. A small commercial drone, modified to carry extra weight, crosses the fence line at low altitude. It's over the yard in under 30 seconds. A bundle drops. The drone pulls up and is back outside the perimeter in 3 minutes. Inside the bundle, phones, SIM cards, drug packets, tobacco, street value under $2,000. Internal market value, 10 times that. In 2018, the federal system recorded 23 drone incidents over its facilities. By 2024, that number was 479. That's a 20-fold increase in 6 years. State systems show the same curve. One state alone was dealing with nearly 400 attempts in 2024. A single interception in South Carolina pulled 464 grams of fentanyl out of one drone package. That's enough to kill the entire population of the facility, many times over, if it hit the wrong hands in the wrong way. The legal situation is what makes this hard to stop. Drones are registered aircraft under federal aviation rules. State prisons can't legally shoot them down or jam the signal. They can intercept the payload after it lands. They can't stop the delivery in the air. Federal agencies have the authority and technology to neutralize drones. State prisons have been asking for the same authority since at least 2022. They still don't have it. The coordination loop is the part that stays with you. The drone pilot stands outside the fence line, sometimes only a few hundred meters out. Inside the facility, inmates with already smuggled contraband phones direct the drop using encrypted messaging apps, telling the pilot which yard, which window, which time. The phones already inside are what make the drone drops possible. The drone drops replace the phones when they get confiscated. The system is self-reproducing. One drop in South Carolina included raw steak, crab legs, and seasoning alongside the drugs and electronics. That wasn't a supply run. That was a demonstration of capability. Whoever organized it wanted the facility to know exactly what they could deliver and exactly how little the walls meant. The drone can carry almost anything, but the single most dangerous item it can carry fits in a shirt pocket and weighs under 4 ounces. Number 4. Cell phones. You're in a cell during a shakedown. 4 officers. They pull everything out. They check the mattress seams, the back of the toilet, the hollow base of the portable fan on your shelf, the inside of your television, the lining of your jacket. They find 3 phones in your block. They don't find yours. It's behind the wall panel above the light switch, next to the SIM card wrapped in tape and tucked into the seam of your mattress. After they leave, you're back online in 20 minutes. The phone's value inside depends entirely on how many phones are in the building. In a facility with heavy penetration, where hundreds of devices are circulating, prices can be as low as $350. In a tightly controlled federal facility where a phone is genuinely rare, prices reach $1,500 to $2,000. In Texas, the state's inspector general put the high end at $2,000 per device, in a system where inmates earn 14 cents an hour at prison labor. The documented uses tell you what the value actually is. An inmate running a meth and heroin distribution network outside the prison from his cell. A call center fraud operation netting $500,000 operated by inmates inside a Georgia facility using drone-delivered phones. Witness intimidation. Violence directed at targets outside. One FBI case. A corrections officer who earned over $100,000 smuggling phones at $100 to $400 per device. In 2021, at one federal prison in Atlanta, about 800 phones were confiscated from roughly 1,500 inmates. That's one phone for every 2 prisoners, in a facility that bans them. Let me tell you what the phone represents beyond the money. An inmate with a phone is an information broker. They know what's happening in their case. They know what's happening in the street. They know things the person in the next cell doesn't. In an environment where information is power and power is safety, that phone is not a luxury. It's infrastructure. The monitored prison phone system generates over $1 billion a year in revenue split between the phone companies and the corrections departments. That system got replaced, in many facilities, by an unmonitored black market. The ban didn't eliminate the phones. It eliminated the monitoring. The phone connects you to the outside. The next item is what the phone makes possible when the connection runs to people who know how to move product. Number 3, hard drugs. A thimble of heroin, roughly a gram or two, is selling for $320 inside a Tennessee facility in 2022. Meth is $100. A stamp-sized square of K2 is $20. A single cigarette is $5. This isn't a price list from a street corner. It's from a first-person account written inside a private prison by an inmate who watched these transactions happen daily. The markups on hard drugs are the highest in the building. Heroin that runs around $150 per gram on the street can cost $500 inside. Meth that goes for $5 to $50 per gram outside can reach $200 to $300 per gram inside, with an ounce broken down into retail doses potentially worth $3,000. Fentanyl is in a different category because fentanyl is a mass casualty risk. The 464 grams recovered from a single South Carolina drone drop in 2024 wasn't a drug sale. It was an arsenal. The supply chain is the thing most people's mental model gets wrong. The image is a visitor swallowing a balloon in a bathroom before entering the facility. That happened. It still does. But during the period when visits were suspended or heavily restricted, the drug supply inside most facilities didn't drop. First-person accounts and records from multiple states say it went up. The only people walking in and out of those buildings every day were staff. A Tennessee inmate documented that prices doubled during the pandemic period. The supply increased. You do the arithmetic. Staff who smuggle drugs are described in first-person accounts as not career criminals. They arrive, work the shift, generate revenue for a few months, and leave before an investigation builds. Understaffing means a departing officer gets replaced fast, often by someone new who becomes the next recruitment target within weeks. Since April 2025, Bureau of Prison staff have used overdose reversal medication more than 500 times in apparent drug emergencies inside federal facilities. That's more than once a day, every day, for over a year. That's not a drug problem being managed. That's a drug problem being kept alive. Hard drugs are the engine, but there are 2 items above them on this list, and neither one is about the drugs themselves. Number 2, untraceable currency. Cash is banned in every American correctional facility. Inmates don't carry it. They operate on commissary accounts, internal debit systems funded by family deposits, monitored by the institution. That's the official layer. Here's the actual layer. A book of stamps bought at the commissary window has a face value of $13.50. Inside the facility, it trades for $8.75 to $11. The discount reflects the risk of carrying it, the friction of the transaction, and the unofficial exchange rate in a market that has no central bank. Stamps are the petty cash of the prison economy. They pay for haircuts, gambling debts, drug installments, favors, protection. Everyone accepts them. They're portable, divisible, and immune to the commissary account monitoring system. Mackerel pouches, priced at around $1 at commissary, are the quarters. Ramen packets are the dimes. A sociological analysis from 2016 found ramen had become the most commonly used prison currency by volume in the U.S. system. That wasn't an accident. The price stayed low while the quality of prison food declined, which made ramen a reliable unit of account. For larger transactions, for drug payments and bribe settlements, the money doesn't cross the wall physically. Cash App, Venmo, Zelle, Green Dot prepaid cards. An inmate with a contraband phone directs an outside associate to make a payment to a third party. That third party deposits an equivalent amount on the inmate's commissary account as an indirect settlement. One documented federal case had an inmate directing over $40,000 a month in bribe payments to a single corrections officer through these platforms. The officer accepted them. For months, in facilities with heavy phone penetration, the digital layer starts displacing stamps. In facilities with tight phone control, stamps retain value as the only medium. The market adjusts. What emerged across the American prison system, without planning or instruction from anyone, is a functional monetary economy, stable petty currency, fractional denominations, a digital settlement layer, commodity-backed stores of value in the form of tobacco, and a secondary currency created by the prisoners themselves from worn stamps laminated together. Every major feature of a modern monetary system, built from ramen and postage. That economy makes everything else on this list possible. But at the top of this list is something that doesn't need a buyer or a seller, it just needs an envelope. Number 1. Drug-saturated paper. It arrives in the mailroom. It looks like a letter from a law firm. There's letterhead. There's a case number. The words attorney-client privilege are printed at the top. The mailroom officer holds it, looks at it, puts it in the legal mail pile, which goes to the inmate unopened because the law says it has to. The officer never knew. Neither did the drug dog. Neither did the scanner. The paper is blank in every way a machine can measure. What's on that paper is real. A drug compound, dissolved in a chemical solvent, applied to the surface of the paper with a brush or a spray, left to dry. The drug is now bonded to the paper fibers. You can't see it. You can't smell it if the compound is clean. The paper tears into 1-inch squares. Each one smokes, or dissolves in water, or goes under the tongue. A sheet of K2 saturated paper can produce enough doses to generate $5,000 to $10,000 at internal retail prices. Fentanyl-soaked paper is more dangerous because the dosing is uncontrolled. A piece too large kills. There's no label on it. There's no way to know which batch is which. The legal mail protection is a real constitutional protection. It exists because attorney-client communication is a right. The court said the state cannot read your legal mail without authorization. That protection was designed to prevent abuse of power against the most vulnerable people in the system. What it created in practice is an unscreened entry point into every correctional facility in the country. One intercepted batch was caught because the sender misspelled solicitor-client privilege on the label. That's the margin. That's the gap between interception and distribution. A spelling error. Officers who handle intercepted drug-soaked mail without gloves have reported contact absorption symptoms from fentanyl-laced paper. Some facilities now use gloves and mass spectrometry scanners in the mailroom. That technology was not standard a decade ago, and it still isn't universal. In most facilities, the mailroom is processing paper by hand, with eyes, with nothing more. There is no federal standard that requires prisons to scan all incoming mail for drug saturation. The constitutional framework that limits that scanning hasn't changed. As of right now, the most dangerous contraband in the American prison system travels by first-class mail, protected by a civil liberties doctrine designed to keep inmates safe. And it gets there reliably, cheaply, and almost invisibly. That's not an accident. That's a market that learned where the door was and walked through it. What you've just seen across 10 items is not a list of things people sneak into prisons. It's a map of how a market operates when you seal off the supply without eliminating the demand. Every item on this list got more valuable when it got banned. Tobacco became more profitable than heroin. A drug designed to treat addiction became one of the most addictive commodities in the building. A constitutional protection for prisoners became the primary delivery mechanism for a drug that has killed hundreds of them. The ban is not the solution to these markets. In every case on this list, the ban is what created the premium. There are two ways to think about why this keeps happening. The first is security. Contraband is a threat to institutional order, and the answer is better interdiction, more searches, harder walls. The second is public health. Contraband is a symptom of unmet addiction, unmet mental health need, and the complete absence of licit options for people who still have cravings and still have pain. Both frameworks have real explanatory power, but neither one fully accounts for the third factor. The most reliable smuggling vector in the American prison system is not a visitor with a balloon. It's not a drone in the dark. It's a person earning $35,000 to $55,000 a year who is being offered bribes worth multiples of their salary to carry something light through a checkpoint where their colleagues trust them too much to screen them carefully. That gets to you when you sit with it. The corrections officer is not the villain in this story. They're the person who got put in the weakest position in the system and paid the least to hold the line. The prison economy adapted to every countermeasure. It replaced confiscated phones with drone-delivered phones. It replaced detectable drugs with chemicals that evade the tests. It replaced physical cash with digital transfers. It moved from visitors to staff when visits were suspended. Every time a door closed, the market found a window. The contraband economy learns faster than the institutions meant to stop it, and it has more economic incentive to keep learning. None of this is random. It's the same market logic that operates everywhere else. Scarcity drives price. Risk demands premium. The weakest gate becomes the most used. You just watched all 10 of them. Most people land on one or two of these and move on. You stayed for the whole thing. If one of these changed how you see what's actually happening behind those walls, put it in the comments. Which one hit different? And why? And if you're not already subscribed, now's the time. The Bureau of Prisons director told Congress in 2026 that a firearm getting into a federal prison is not a matter of if, just when. The drones are already over the fence. The paper is already in the mailroom. The phone that coordinated the last drop is already in someone's mattress seam. And the officer at the checkpoint is checking the clock, waiting for the shift to end, thinking about whether the money's worth it. Most of them say no. Some of them say yes. The system counts on the ones who say no. The market only needs a few who say yes. That's been true since the first prison went up. It'll be true for the next one, too.